Hey everyone, happy July 4th, happy Independence Day. America, almost, folks. We're close to 250 years as a constitutional republic, a democracy. Can we make it? Can we make it to 250? Time will tell. I completely forgot that Friday was July 4th, and 2 days ago I emailed my buddy Glenn Kirschner. I'm like, Glenn, you wanna come on Friday? He said, sure. And then I felt so bad yesterday. I'm like, oh my God, it's July 4th. And Glenn, being a trooper, said, all right, I'll just leave my family and community and children and my rest and come and talk about whether or not we can endure and survive a fascist regime because Glenn cares. For those who don't know, Glenn Kirschner, he is now a Substack guru. He has his own Substack. You have to subscribe. He does a nightly show at 8 p.m. Isn't that right, Glenn?
At about 8:30. And here's the thing, it's always free to subscribe. I don't put my stuff behind a paywall. You can certainly support me if you want to, but I'm not comfortable with paywalls. So come on over, hit subscribe. It's always free.
The one person like me who is a fool and has no paywalls. It's me and Glenn Kirschner. We're not stupid. We just want to keep people informed. So if you don't have the few bucks, subscribe. If you do have a few bucks, Glenn has a kid. I've got like 800 kids. We like Blanche Dubois. We depend on the kindness of strangers. And Glenn, also tell them about your fantastic YouTube show.
Yeah, so every day I post a legal analysis video on YouTube, my channel, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner. It's been up and running for about 5 years. We're well over 1 million subscribers now. So that is also always free. Come on over, watch the videos, hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you a thing. And what I do, Wajahat, after 30 years as a federal prosecutor, look, I was honored to be a public servant. My salary was paid with taxpayer dollars, and I try to give the taxpayers their dollars worth every damn day. And now I take everything that I learned in 30 years arguing cases in courtrooms, and I try to talk about the legal issue of the day, in real terms, because there is so much propaganda, disinformation, outright lies from Trump and company about the legal issues of the day. I try to take it, translate it from legalese into English, and bring everybody along for the ride. So that's what we do 7 days a week over on Justice Matters.
And I really appreciate that. I'm a recovering attorney, but Glenn was actually a successful attorney. I practiced for a while. I did good work, but it's about connecting the dots for people. It's about not necessarily dumbing it down, but putting in plain terms what the stakes are, right? And bringing everybody along for the ride because fascism comes for everyone, folks. And a democracy is a team sport. And so that's why I really appreciate Glenn is that he tries his best to connect the dots for everyone. And I always get this question, Glenn. I'm sure you do as well when we go and speak. I'm nobody. I'm just an average American. What can I do? And I always tell people, I'm also nobody. We're all nobodies. We're all somebodies to someone. And I believe everyone has a superpower. And I mentioned that as the beginning to this, Glenn, because here we are on July 4th celebrating our Independence Day. And a poll came out that said Americans are feeling the least amount of pride in their country. And the reason for that is they're seeing what's happening in their country. They're seeing what's happening with this Trump regime. Just yesterday, Glenn. I mean, right before I press record, folks, I told Glenn, for those who thought Glenn and I were being hyperbolic with our concerns, for those who ignored us, for those who said everything will be okay, don't worry about it, the guardrails will hold, I give you the past week. But forget the past week, I'll just give you yesterday. Glenn, as I was about to shut down for the evening, and I'm like you, I'm a workaholic, I read the news that Donald Trump is going to send 200 Marines.
Yeah.
Where? To Florida. Why? To help ICE terrorize communities. There's also thousands of ICE agents right now helping the National Guard and the military, or vice versa, I should say, terrorize communities in LA. A bill passed, a Republican bill, which Glenn, the best poll that Trump has on that bill is -19. And that's the best bill. Because as more and more people read about the bill, they realize, oh my God, we're giving permanent tax cuts to the rich, but we're taking money away from Medicaid and hospitals. But there's $175 billion in that bill, folks, that goes to ICE, that gives ICE a bigger budget than the armies of foreign countries. And as this is all happening, Donald Trump earlier this week opens up Alcatraz Island, which I call a concentration camp, says he wants to strip citizenship from U.S. citizens and wants to deport U.S. citizens to foreign gulags. And then to top it off, Glenn, yesterday the Supreme Court said, you know what, Trump? Go ahead and send these 8 immigrants to a country they have never visited, South Sudan, which is a country in civil war, where most likely they'll die. And so then I remembered the quote from Ben Franklin. It's a republic if you can keep it. Glenn, it's the wheel of horror. I'm spinning it. It lands on wherever you want it to land, and I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Wajahat, and thank you for your voice in this fight. I remember fondly the days years ago when you and I would sometimes share a train ride from Washington, D.C. to 30 Rockefeller Center in New York and back to appear on David Gura's weekend show, Up with David Gura, share a train ride back. And I look back on those days fondly, and I appreciate your voice in the fight, every day since then. So, yeah, there's a parade of horribles that you just threw out on the table, and we can unpack some of them. But let me start with a couple of big picture things. We'll
Sure.
start at 30,000 feet. First of all, we're all nobodies and we're all somebodies. And you know what? We have fought for our independence before and we won. And we were a whole bunch of nobodies, right?
Yep.
We fought to keep the Union together before and we won. And you know what those fights look like? I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Largely men picking up muskets and, muzzle loaded rifles, stepping out onto open grassy fields, putting life and limb on the line, sometimes fighting brother on brother when they were fighting to keep the Union together. And they won. And guess what? They were all scared shitless and they were all nobodies, but they all overcame their fear. And first we won our independence and then we kept our republic. We saved the Union. We're nobodies today and we're somebody today. And I'm not urging that today's fight that we are in, we're in the thick of it right now and it's going to get worse, not better. I'm not suggesting it will involve violence. I'm not suggesting we pick up muskets or, today's version of muskets, assault weapons that we basically give away to everybody like candy. But we have tools. We have tools in our arsenal to fight. And I'm really not pushing my YouTube channel, but I just finished a video. And at the end of it, it's a clip from my recent interview with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. And he gives people information they can use and how they can use it, the tools that they all have in their pockets or their hands right now, and how to use it. And he's brilliant at it. He's a democracy warrior. He thinks of things I would never think of. So I would urge people to go and watch that final clip because today I take on this exact topic. Can we keep our republic? Undeniably, we can keep our republic, but it's going to take a hell of a lot of work because look, Wajahat, no prosecutor is going to save us. No judge is going to save us. No appellate court is going to save us. And no politician is going to save us because if politicians could have saved us, if the Dems could have saved us, they would have done it by now.
Right.
They can't save us. I'm not saying they're not fighting in every way they can think of to fight. I wish they would fight harder. I wish they would take both gloves off. There are things that I wish they would do that they're not willing to do. I don't know if they're saving their political capital for a rainy day. It's raining hellfire down on us right now. This is the rainy day. Spend all your political capital and fight for us, right? Fight for decency, fight for diversity, fight for democracy. Because Lord knows they're fighting for indecency. And you mentioned some of the ways they're doing it. Listen, I was active duty Army JAG for 6.5 years, prosecuting court-martial cases and handling on appeal death penalty and espionage cases and many, many others before I left the Army and joined the Department of Justice for my career as a federal prosecutor. And when I see the military being deployed to the streets of California, now to the streets of Florida, first of all, it's absolutely unlawful. It violates the Posse Comitatus Act, which is just a fancy term, but it means the military cannot engage in civilian law enforcement. And don't tell me when our Marines, who I love and respect and honor, they don't want to be out there. When they're out in the streets, they can't help but be involved in civilian law enforcement. Even their presence standing ramrod straight with military assault rifles, which I carried when I was an Army JAG, you're facilitating civilian law enforcement, period. Don't pretend that you're not. And of course, we've seen even worse where they're detaining people and they're doing things that clearly violate the law. Well, this is going to sound like a plug, but I promise it's not. I have a two-part series going up on my YouTube channel tomorrow and Sunday. I interviewed one of the preeminent military experts. He just retired after a career as an Army JAG, and he's now in charge of something called the Orders Project at the National Institute of Military Justice. And what it focuses on is the difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order, and a soldier's or military member's responsibility to obey lawful orders, but responsibility to disobey
Mm,
unlawful orders. That is going to come into full focus. The
yep.
importance of that is going to be at its zenith very soon. And so these are the kind of things that we need to educate the public on, even to educate our military members, because that decision is fraught with peril. But when Donald Trump ultimately gives that order to shoot protesters in the legs, that will be an unlawful order that every military member, from the general to the private first class, must disobey. That's one way we keep our republic, because I think the end game here, Wajahat, is Donald Trump trying to use the military to keep him in power once
Yep.
he openly defies every Supreme Court ruling or federal court ruling that gets handed down. Once he openly defies these things, he's announcing he's no longer a legitimate president. He will no longer abide by our constitutional construct of government. And the military has a responsibility not to keep an illegitimate president in power if he starts giving unlawful orders. So listen, I still have hope. I'm an optimist, but it's ugly. It's dark. We are living in the Trump-induced darkness. We've got points of light out there that we need to keep propping up and supporting. But we are the ones who will save us, and we're going to do it by employing what Senator Sheldon says we need to do every day. And it's not only protest and march and rally and stand up and speak out, but he talks about things like, first of all, get involved in a cause, join together with other people. My wife was out on a postcard writing for several hours just yesterday. Do something, band together, because it amplifies your voice, it makes you feel better, and it makes us all stronger. He also said, listen, everybody's got a cell phone. Here's what
Yeah.
you do all day, every day. Doesn't matter if you have 2 followers, 200 followers, or 2 million followers. Post stories about how the Trump regime is hurting you, hurting your family, hurting your friends, hurting your neighbors. Flood the freaking. Can I cuss? I'm a
Yeah, you
Jersey
could
guy.
say anything you
It's
want.
so hard not to cuss for a
Yeah, I
Jersey
know.
guy. Flood the fucking zone. Oh, that felt good. I've been holding that in.
Yeah.
Flood the
Catharsis.
zone with stories all day, every day about how Trump is hurting you. Get it out there, make it saturate, just like Donald Trump, saturates us with things like Big Beautiful Bill and Alligator Alcatraz, all which is a bunch of horse shit, right? Flood the zone with how he is harming you and everybody around you, because the more that that saturates, the more we win the hearts and minds of the American people who don't want us to lapse into dictatorship or autocracy. So there are lots and lots and lots of ways to engage and fight.
That's fantastic. You're on fire, and I'm glad, like me, you don't have a failure of imagination. And the reason why I say that is, I think a lot of Americans still have a failure of imagination, and they say the following, Glenn: "It can't happen here. Oh, there's no way he could get away with it." And I just want to give people some receipts. People said, "There's no way a clown like Donald Trump, who runs a campaign of bigotry and fear, can be elected president." He was elected president. I said in 2019, the receipts are there. He will not leave peacefully. There's no way he will incite an insurrection. He did.
Mhm.
There's no way Marjorie Taylor Greene will be the standard bearer of the new Republican Party. She'll be kept in check. I said she represents where the base is going. There's no way he could be elected again. He was elected again. There's no way he will actually pardon all 1,600 insurrectionists, including the violent ones who came with violent intent and weapons and harmed our police officers and tried to kill our elected officials. He did. Pardon all of them. There's no way he's actually going to be literal and serious when in October he said, and I want to quote him, that I'm open to unleashing the National Guard and military on the quote enemy from within, where he quoted Hitler. Folks, he did it. And so I'm with you, and I'm glad to hear you say that because it makes me sound less hysterical and hyperbolic. I said this yesterday, I've been saying it all week. My to activate my English major and my imagination, if I'm Donald Trump, and I don't want to give him ideas, what I see happening, Glenn, is the following. They just passed this horrible bill. He's underwater. He knows this isn't popular. If I were him, and now I have my own personal Gestapo in the form of ICE, and I've just supercharged it with 10,000 agents from 6,000 agents, and I've given it the budget that is comparable to the budget of militaries of foreign countries. Come 2026, when it seems most likely Democrats will take the House, and it seems they might even just take the Senate, let's just see. And if I feel I'm imperiled, if I'm Donald Trump, what I would do and what I'm setting the feeds for is a narrative that says we are under attack. There is an invasion, to quote Stephen Miller. I, as a president, as a commander in chief with the power vested in me and the broad powers given to me by the Supreme Court and the Republicans, who have completely neutered their own checks and balances in the House and Senate, I have to declare martial law
Right,
because I have to protect this country. And
right,
don't worry, I'll bring the elections back. We're just going to punt it for a while. Oh,
right.
you're protesting? Oh, you're causing chaos? Let me unleash ICE. And going back to what you said, let me finally do something that I want to do in my first term, where I said to all those, I said to my own staff, including Mark Esper, can I just shoot these peaceful BLM protesters in the leg? And Mark Esper, who's hardcore MAGA, but thank God there were some guardrails there at Mark Esper and Kelly and others, Mattis, who said, whoa, whoa, whoa. Esper said, no, you can't just shoot Americans in the knee as they're protesting. And so, Glenn, am I out of pocket here, imagining that if we don't step up and stop them, this can be the potential endgame in about 2 years or less than 2 years?
No, he will try to use the military to keep him in power. And I am exactly where you are in believing. Listen, he passed this big, horrific, obscene bill. Basically, let's kill the poor to feed the rich. And usually I would qualify or caveat that by saying, well, kill the poor figuratively. But when you're putting 17 million people off of their health care, no, you're kind of killing them literally. So he's killing the poor to feed the rich. He doesn't care about, the fact that he's so far underwater that he can't even see the surface, and that if this continues, that his party will get crushed in the midterms. He doesn't care because of what you just said. He will invoke the Insurrection Act. He will declare martial law, and he will put off, postpone the elections,
Yeah.
which means he will cancel the elections, right?
Yep.
This is all straight out of the dictator's playbook. And the man said, I'm going to be a dictator on day one, but only day
Yep.
one, because let's be fair, because most dictators voluntarily relinquish power on day two once they come into absolute power. That's the way it always works. So, not. So, and then, what you said about Mark Esper being in the Oval Office when Donald Trump said, why can't we just shoot the protesters in the leg? Just shoot them in the legs. Mark Esper said, and I can pretty much quote him now. He
Yep.
said it was both a question and a suggestion
Yep.
from Donald Trump. It wasn't yet an order. I almost wish it was, because then, shit would have hit the fan and the military would have to have disobeyed the order. I wish we got there in the first administration, but we didn't. So we're going to have to get there in this administration with the military refusing to obey unlawful orders. But, Donald Trump also said, according to folks who were there and heard him say it, listen, just shoot women, pregnant women at the border. And they would tell him that's unlawful. He said, yeah, well, I'll pardon you. Right. And watch out. That was before he had absolute immunity. Imagine how unconstrained he is now. So I agree with you. That's absolutely where we are headed. And that's why we are the ones. And I'm somewhat heartened by the fact that, the hands off rallies were big. The No King's Day rallies were significantly bigger. We have to keep that justice ball rolling, gathering speed, gathering mass, gathering momentum. Because if it starts to, backslide, then we're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
So, the way to topple a dictator is to get 3.5% of the American people to stand up, speak out, march, rally, protest, and then we have a shot of toppling the dictator. We've got to do it peacefully all day, every day. And I've talked in recent weeks about if you are a protester and police officers begin to apply force to you, the do's and don'ts of that situation. Because as a career prosecutor in DC, I work the protest cases, which means we would have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who were arrested during the protest brought to us, the prosecutors, and we would have to decide when we reviewed the evidence that the police had supporting the arrest whether to charge somebody or decline to charge somebody. So I love this independent media platform because during the No Kings Day rally, I was on with, Don Lemon and Joy Reid and Jim Acosta talking in real time about exactly what people needed to know at that very moment, the
Awesome.
do's and don'ts of protests and arrests. And so, the fact that we're on here now and others are on here, it's like such a valuable, necessary tool, independent media straight to the people, giving them what they need when they need it. And I'm feel privileged to be part of this. But yeah, this is I'm lockstep with you on the belief that this is where Donald Trump is going, using the military against the citizenry and using that as a vehicle to cancel the midterm elections.
Do I have you for 10 more minutes? I want to get
Yes.
you back to your family. All right. So,
Look, my burgers are already freezing cold. My family members have already left. No, actually, Wajat, tomorrow is our big family gathering, so I'm
oh,
glad.
that's great. And I'm a masochist like you, and I should have spent today resting, but I'm like, I actually care. I care about the country, and I care about freedom. I care about rights, and I care about helping people. I gotta do something. And speaking about fighting, I want to go back to something you said in the beginning. We need fighters, right? And you had a sense of passion and urgency. And this is my take on this, and I want your take on this. I agree with you. Democrats, who right now are an opposition party, right? Both sides aren't the same, folks. I think if you followed me long enough, I have told you both sides aren't the same. I said vote for the Democrat, even I have my critiques for it, but I don't bend the knee to any elected official, right? I criticize Democrats because as our opposition party, we need more. We need our fighters to be stronger, louder, more tough. It's like if you have an event and you have Mike Tyson versus Pee Wee, you're like, Pee Wee, maybe just go do some push ups. Pee Wee, eat some greens, bro, right? So this is what we have right now, this Democratic Party. And Glenn, I'll bring some receipts. Over the weekend, last weekend, this bill that was being debated, this bill that is this horrific bill, like you said, will kill people. It will kill people. If 17 million people get kicked off of Medicaid, if rural hospitals shut down, if 25% of nursing homes are closed, our fellow Americans are going to die. And Republicans didn't care. They voted for it anyway to please the oligarchy and to please Donald Trump. As this was going through the pipeline, and furthermore, $175 billion to ICE, and we just saw Marines. Now they're going to be landing in Florida to terrorize fellow Americans. Democratic leadership, instead of informing the people like you are, like I am on independent media, right? They went
Yeah.
on these privileged, prestigious channels that you and I used to go to, cable news. And as you know, on Sunday, cable news, that's where politicians meet the press. And instead of warning people about what's happening in the bill, instead of informing people, instead of connecting the dots, they used all their ammunition to try to smear Zoran Mamdani, who won 56% of the vote. They used all their ammunition to attribute to him a quote he didn't even say. All right. And to this day, they still haven't endorsed him. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you something else. We found out that some of the people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024, guess what? They voted for Zoran Mamdani in the primary. Some of the people who voted for Donald Trump in 2024, they voted for AOC. I had Mike Madrid on yesterday. I strongly recommend you all watch that video if I may shamelessly promote. I call him the Latino whisperer. He's on point. For decades, he understands those communities and those votes, and he was warning Democrats, don't take that vote for granted. And he said, listen, many of the Latinos who voted for Trump, it's because they bought the lie that he'll make their life better, and now they're turning on him. They're turning on him because he's become so extreme on immigration. But those Latinos, you know who they actually really excited about, Glenn? Bernie. And the reason he said was the following: fighters, authentic, messaging, and an economic populist message, right? He says they don't care about these terms, democratic, socialist, capitalist, what people don't give a shit. He said people are sick and tired of the establishment, and people want someone who can reform the institutions and fight for them. Fighters with authenticity, giving a message of affordability and economic populism. That's it. And and to me, that's common sense. The 1% versus the 99%, right? You're a prosecutor. You remember, or I'm going to put on my law hat. You got to tell a story. We're storytellers at the end of the day, right? And the story is this: good guy, bad guy. Good guy wants to go somewhere. Bad guy is the challenge. Good guy overcomes the bad guy, right? To me, the message would be it's us, the many versus the few. It's the 99% versus the 1%. It's the workers versus the oligarchy. It's the rest of us trying to fight for an affordable city and affordable wage, but it's the billionaires who are Trump's friends who now just passed this big billionaire bill who are screwing the rest of us, right? And so I say all of this because you mentioned you want Democrats to fight harder, fight better. And now I yield the floor to you. What do you want them to say? What do you want them to do in this moment to help us? Because I agree with you. We can't outsource this just to Democrats or the institutions. It's going to take all of us. But still, they are part of the resistance. How can we unleash them and how should they be unleashed in a way to truly fight for us in this moment? Pardon my rant.
They should be doing precisely what you just said, right? It's all about messaging.
Mm,
As a career prosecutor for 30 years, I never left the courtroom. Well, taking time out for meals, of course, to borrow a line from George Carlin. I opted not to become a bureaucrat. I opted not to climb the ladder of success with air quotes around the word success at the Department of Justice. And believe it or not, somebody foolishly asked me if I wanted to become more of a muckety muck at DOJ. And I said, no, thank you very much. I don't want to leave the courtroom. Um, and it was this highlights, I think, the importance of the message.
yeah.
I could have had the strongest case in the world, DNA evidence putting the perpetrator on the scene of the crime. We found the murder weapon, in the perpetrator's bedroom closet. I've got three eyewitnesses who just came from the Shiloh Baptist Church in Northwest DC, unimpeachable witnesses who saw the murder and identify the defendant. I've got a damn confession after the suspect was Mirandized by the police. But if I don't message it all properly to the jury,
Yep.
guess what? The defense attorney, who I have the utmost respect for, my dear friends in the defense bar, and just allow me a quick aside,
Yeah.
because I always said prosecutors have a hard job, but we only have one job: marshaling the evidence and trying to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Defense attorneys have two jobs. They have to zealously represent the interests of their client, regardless of whether they're guilty or not. That doesn't matter from a defense attorney's perspective. They have to fight just as hard. But their second job is to be a check on government excess and abuse, police misconduct, prosecutorial overreach. Defense attorneys have two jobs to do. That's hard. Prosecutors have one job to do.
Yeah.
But if I didn't message all of this wonderful evidence I had, I'm going to lose the case anyway, because the defense attorney is going to poke holes, is going to have more creative arguments than I had to the jury, and maybe undermine in the juror's mind that the evidence proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's in the messaging, and you use the perfect example of it. It sounds like, the Dems who are coming on Meet the Press or these other shows are squandering their opportunity to message in a way that will help inspire people to fight to save the republic,
Yep.
right? They've got the ammunition, right? They've got the information. They've got all the horrific, abusive, unlawful, unconstitutional shit that Donald Trump does every day against the American people, right? I mean, this big, ugly bill is the fuck everyone but the billionaires bill. That's what it is. That's the message. And we don't get that message. We get what you just described: infighting, because let's face it, them politicians care about their status and their position and their power and their reelection prospects as much as anybody else. So, yeah, we need more gloves off fighters who are willing to spend every fucking penny of their political capital to try to not only represent their constituents well and honorably, but to save our damn republic. People like, you want to talk about fighters? Look at Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. They said, I don't care about my own reelection prospects as much as I care about fighting to save American democracy. And they lost their job, but they didn't lose their honor.
I was talking to Joy Reid yesterday, Joanne Reid, and she gave a similar analogy. You're saying use all of your equity, use whatever you have, leave it all on the floor, right? And she said, go hard in the paint. And by go hard in the paint, folks, again, I want to be clear, Glenn and I, because we're always the one who have to like, yeah, exactly. No one's saying use violence. Apparently, if you wear a MAGA hat, you can be a violent insurrectionist. But if you're the rest of us, you can't even use analogies. We're not talking about using violence because they want us to use violence so they can unleash ICE to crush us. That's what Stephen Miller wants. That's why, according to the Wall Street Journal, he unleashed ICE to cause escalation and
Yes, yes,
provocation,
yes.
and terrorize innocent communities and home alone in a Home Depot and 7-Eleven. But hard in the paint means unleash everything, right? Like go all out, right? Fight the big fight. Think big. Go ahead and say like Zoran Mamdani, free buses. Why not? Go ahead and say help the tenants. Go ahead and say you're like, you know what, Medicare for all. Go for it. Why not? If Donald Trump can do this bullshit and say I'm gonna make sure as soon as you elect me, there's going to be peace in Ukraine and Russia. What peace? As soon as you elect me, there's going to be peace in Gaza. What peace? As soon as you elect me, the price of eggs are going to come down. He's a bullshit artist. Why not we give people a vision of hope, give them policies that actually help them, and actually fight for it? And then go against Donald Trump and use these words like fascist, use these words like racist, use these words like bigoted, use these words like oligarchy, right? It's not much, Glenn. Now that I'm even saying it out loud, going hard in the paint is not really even going hard in the paint. It's kind of like basic stuff, right? It's like just dribbling the ball. Just dribble. Get on the court and dribble. And, I see this right now, Glenn, and I don't know if you're with me on this, but, maybe I know agrees with me. Danielle agrees with me. When I see ICE, I'm old enough to remember ICE did not exist in the 20th century. I'm old enough to remember that ICE was created during the failed war on terror. I'm old enough to remember there was the Patriot Act and ICE, and many of us who marched against that war and knew that war would be disastrous said, folks, fellow Americans, right now you want the feeling of safety, but you're giving up your freedoms. And under the leadership of, oh, I don't know, either a Democrat or Republican who wants to flex, the War on Terror, Department of Homeland Security, ICE, the Patriot Act can and will be abused and used against Americans. And I'm at this point right now with what I see what ICE has become. And ICE is going to become, folks. And I'm calling it the Gestapo. I am perfectly fine saying abolish ICE. I don't think we need it. I think we have enough to control the border. I think we have enough resources. But if ICE in the next 3 months, I said yesterday 6 months, and someone said, bro, it's not even going to be 6 months, 1 month. If ICE continues to be used as Donald Trump's Gestapo to terrorize fellow Americans, why do we need ICE, Glenn?
Yeah. And let me use, we don't. Now, listen, the career prosecutor in me bristles a little bit when we talk about getting rid of all law enforcement agencies, ICE or others, because there are lots of good men and women who wear a badge on their chest and a gun on their hip, and they're actually protect and serve people. I know because I worked with thousands of them across every federal law enforcement agency known to man. And let me tell you, we have a hell of a lot of law enforcement agencies concentrated, particularly in Washington, D.C., whether it's FBI, ATF, DEA, Park Police, Capitol Police, U.S. Marshals, the Metro Police, the Amtrak Police, the Smithsonian Police, Postal Police. It goes on and on and on and on. And the vast majority of them are good, protect, and serve people. Now, you got lots of bad apples, too, and we know that. I think ICE is being turned into basically a paramilitary organization. And as you
Yeah.
say, they're now going to be funded to the tune of more money than other countries use to fund their military proper. That is, I think, an abuse of what ICE was at least originally designed to accomplish. But let me go down to more of the practical implications of going scorched earth and trying to deport anybody who is undocumented. Let me talk about how fucking foolish it is. And this is, I think, what the Dems should be messaging every day. Maybe many of them are. I don't watch cable news much anymore. I've tuned out there. I watch a lot of Substack, though, I'll tell you that. So when you look at, for example, an analysis done by the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy, ITAP, for 2002, which is the last year they had comprehensive data that they analyzed. Undocumented immigrants paid $96 billion into government coffers. Why? Because they pay taxes, because they have withheld from their pay, payroll tax, Social Security, Medicaid, unemployment, and they will never draw a dime of the money that they pay in. That's a $96 billion windfall to
Yep.
the government. Plus, they're out there in the fields, the produce fields, and they're in the garment district, and they're basically keeping our economy up and running. So without them, we're only fucking ourselves financially. Now I'm talking about undocumented folks who are living an honest life, have never committed a crime, have been convicted of nothing, are providing for their family. Their only crime is coming here undocumented, trying to find a better way of life for themselves and their family, right? And so, do you know how much money it costs to run around? Well, we see it in the big ugly bill. How much money they're going to devote to running through Home Depot and 7-Eleven parking lots, trying to collect up the folks who are, one, providing us with free money in that they're paying taxes and they'll never be able to use the benefits that they're paying for. And two, they're out there keeping our economy up and running. Watch out. It's lose, 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 lose for the
Absolutely.
American people and for our economy and for the safety of our streets, because these are not the people who are the worst of the worst violent offenders. Listen, take people who are undocumented, who have been convicted of, rape and murder and mayhem and gun offenses and drug. Take them and deport them after they've been convicted and served their sentence. Deportation is an important law enforcement tool to keep our nation safe, but they're just shitting all over the very purpose of deportation. And they're hurting people and families. They're hurting the economy. They're hurting our public coffers. They're spending untold amounts of money.
They bankrupted it. That's
this.
why they need this money. They
Yeah,
bankrupted
it's insanity, and it's exclusively to prop up one person, the big fat orange deity, and throw red meat to his base so he can retain power. Period. This is absolute insanity. Unfortunately, we have one party that has lost its way, and they're willing to bow down to their dear orange deity, and I don't want to. Let me end with this, because
Yeah.
I am forever trying to talk to Republicans. Um, I grew up in a conservative household. I have said many times over, when I was a young man, I voted for Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush. As an older and wiser man, I voted for Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and I don't know that I could ever bring myself to vote for a Republican again. But I've often said, and I'm going to try to wrap this up quickly and succinctly, but I will fail miserably at that, I'm sure. When people, I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier. When people are like, well, we're never going to have to fight for our independence. We did it. We had to do it not that long ago. Well, we're never going to have to fight to keep the republic, to keep our union together. We did that in even more recent history. So how can you say these things can never happen again?
Yep.
If history teaches us anything, of course it can happen again. So here's what I say to the Republicans, and I'm never willing to completely give up on them, even though they have shown that they're kind of unworthy of our efforts. I said, look, when we were fighting for the Republic, when we were fighting to save the Union, that did involve people picking up muskets and fighting brother on brother and, risking life and limb, many of whom died. But today, the Republicans don't have to do any of that to
Mm.
save the Union, to save. All they have to do, Wajahat, is cross the aisle to save democracy.
That's
They
it. You
don't
just
have to
needed
fight
four.
brother
You
on
just
brother and
needed
sister
four in
on
the House.
sister. All they need to do is cross the aisle to save democracy and represent their constituents and the American people as a whole. It shouldn't be that hard, Senator Murkowski. Bully for you that you saved a little something for your people in Alaska. You ended up fucking the entire country in the process. Cross the aisle to save democracy before it's too late.
Let me respond and end with this 3 points because you mentioned when it comes to Republicans, my take on this, and I was talking to Robbie Jones, who is the founder of PRRI, a fantastic, basically a nonprofit that does polling when it comes to politics and religion. And Robbie comes just like you from the conservatives. He's born as a Southern Baptist. He knows the hymns. He knows those communities well. And as he grew older, he learned more about white supremacy and has been talking about white Christian nationalism. And he said to me, and I had this conversation with him about 2 weeks ago, based on the latest poll. Robbie's been waiting for 10 years, Glenn, doing poll after poll after poll to see what the bottom is. Specifically, he's saying, what will it take? What type of cruelty, viciousness, ugliness will it take for white Christians and white Christian nationalists, not all white Christians, right? But the base of Trump to say enough. Too cruel, too disgusting. And then the poll that came out that the PRI did recently was about immigration. And specifically, he said this one chilled him to his bones, because he said the base, and specifically the Christian base of Donald Trump, not all Christians, not all white people, were perfectly fine with Donald Trump interning people, potentially killing immigrants at the border, right? And were perfectly fine with deportation. And he said, this is Robbie's words. After 10 years, I've come to the conclusion that this base, which represents about 25 to 30% of America, we can't win them over. That's his words. We cannot win them over. Call it a cult, call them brainwashed. They don't have horns on their head, but they're part of Earth 3, and they're going to be with Donald Trump until the end, like lemmings. And I agree with him. And this bill right now, where you said all we needed was a Murkowski, we just need 2 senators, and they refused. Even after, Glenn, they told America. Josh Hawley wrote an op-ed about how it would be terrible. Lisa Murkowski, after she voted for it, Glenn was asked about it, and she goes, yeah, it's really bad. And she still voted for it. All you needed, folks, was four Republicans in the House to cross the aisle, and they still didn't do it. That being said, Glenn, I'm like you, and I'm an optimist. And when I say this, people say, Waj, it's a cult. When you talk about Trump voters, I'm like, no, no, no. You have to realize there are a lot of Trump voters who aren't part of MAGA, who don't drink the Kool-Aid, who just were first-time voters, who just wanted a change, who were like many of these Latino voters who got misinformed and thought he'd make their life better. I believe, Glenn, that as the shit hits the fan and things get worse, and they will get worse, you will see even 10% of Trump voters get radicalized and say, F this guy, F the Republicans. Because there's something about losing your healthcare and seeing someone die in your community by lack of healthcare, right? By losing the nursing homes, by seeing the bullshit. The one thing, Glenn, that you can't bullshit people on is how much money they have in their pocket. They know. I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat. If someone says gas prices are awesome, you're like, bro, no, they're not. Like, I'm surgical about gas prices because me and my wife work 3 jobs between us, and we know. Egg prices are down, trust me. No, bro, they're not, right? When it comes to the economy, the color that still trumps the color white in America is the color green. So I think as the shit hits the fan and it gets worse, you can win over some of these people. I saw it happen in 2007, 2006, when a lot of the people who voted for George W. Bush said, this mother effer is lying. The war on terror was a lie. He lied during Katrina, and oh my God, look at this economic crisis. So that's my one hope when it comes to some of these Trump voters. I think we've lost about 25 to 30% of them in my lifetime, but I think 5 to 10% of them can switch our way. When it comes to immigrants, I just want to say this from a macro level. Glenn, we have the World Cup in 2026 in LA. We have Olympics in 2028. And I posted this yesterday and went viral. If you were visiting a foreign country and there was even a 5% chance that you left your passport in your hotel, which I have done when visiting a foreign country, and then you could get picked up by masked armed agents and deported to El Salvador, would you visit that country, Glenn? And we've seen the first 6 months that $12 billion revenue loss thanks to loss of tourism. People are not coming to America, all right? Number one. Number two, as Glenn said, immigrants do 3 things that Donald Trump doesn't do. They pay their taxes, even the undocumented. They commit fewer crimes than people born in America, and they help the economy. Been proven. Americans will not do the jobs that undocumented immigrants do. None of us are picking fruits and vegetables in the scorching sun. None of us are working those jobs in diners. None of us are doing the hospitality jobs. These undocumented immigrants in particular, and also brown and black immigrants, do the jobs that sustain the US economy. We are killing ourselves with our racism and our white supremacy and by unleashing ICE. We're killing our own economy. And the final thing I'll say, Glenn, and thank you for letting me rant, is I'm old enough to remember. And, I'm an English major, not a history major. It was a country. Maybe you could tell me what this country was, where there was a monarchy, and a monarchy kept pillaging another country. They called them colonists. And the colonists were like, man, you're all the way there and you're a monarchy and we're paying taxes and we're not getting anything in return and you're not listening to us. And then they started a slogan called no taxation without representation.
Representation.
And then a few of them said, why the F are we allowing this monarchy to deny us our freedom, our responsibility, our rights, our goods and services? We want sovereignty. We want independence. And those people are now called the founding fathers. And they decided in 1776, you know what, we're going to do something audacious. We're going to declare our independence and say that we are a sovereign nation and that this type of unjust abuse by a foreign country that demands to put its boot on our neck, we're going to remove that boot, damn it. Because you know what? We give taxes, you don't represent us. We want basic goods and services, you don't give it to us. So we don't need you. We're going to be our own independent sovereign country, and we're going to call ourselves the United States of America. And they wrote something called the Declaration of Independence. I think that country is America, Glenn. And today is July 4th. We've gone 249 years. Will we get to 250 as this republic? I believe, Glenn, it is up to us to fight for it. I believe the win here is that there's more of us than there are of them. That's what people fail to realize. There's more of us than there are of them. There's 330 million Americans. And I still believe in the power of the people, our voice, our pens, our dollars, folks, what we choose to invest in, what we choose not to invest in. And I believe there's still a fighting chance. But to have a fighting chance, you need fighters. I thank you for tolerating my rant, and I yield the floor to you for the final comment.
Wajahat, we are the ones that are going to save us, and I believe we will. The end is as of yet unwritten, and I don't know that. I'm not a betting man. I'm not a high roller. $1 is my betting limit. I'm not sure how much of my max $1 bet I would put on us rising to the challenge and saving our republic. Probably more than 50 cents. I think it's more than a push. Um, but it's up to us. But here's what I hope people will hold fast to. Everything that Donald Trump is doing is an indication that he is desperate
Yeah,
because a confident dictator doesn't need to do all of this horrific, aggressive, overt bullshit. All he needs to do is stand up and say, obey me or else. But, people are not obeying Donald Trump. So he has to get more desperate and more desperate and more desperate. But that's a sign of weakness. It's not a
correct.
sign of strength. I absolutely believe he will continue to overplay his hand. But
Yes.
more importantly, I believe that when he does, it will inspire us in ever increasing numbers because we are all going to get hurt more and more every day by Donald Trump in our pocketbook and in our families and in our communities. And I believe we're going to rise to the challenge. And I believe that the people will ultimately spell the political demise of Donald Trump. He won't be able to, outshoot that. He won't be able to out deploy that. He won't be able to, out unlawful and out unconstitutional that as he is trying to do. Let me leave you with one other thing. I loved Politico's reporting yesterday on how the federal judges, in the wake of that horrific no nationwide
Yeah.
injunction ruling, which is asinine. So one person with money and means can hire a lawyer, go into court, and have their constitutional rights protected. But even though it's obviously unconstitutional, fuck everybody else who doesn't have the money and means to get into court and have their constitutional rights protected. No, that's why we need nationwide injunctions. But more importantly, great article in Politico yesterday, Kyle Cheney, who I'm a huge fan of, um, highlighted several cases in the last few days where the federal court judges have found workarounds for the Supreme Court's national injunction ban.
Mhm.
And the thing is, they're legitimate workarounds. They're class action lawsuits. Their application of the Administrative Procedure Act, which gives a judge the opportunity, the lawful opportunity, even after the new Supreme Court ruling, to strike down something the administration has done. And once it's struck down, it's de facto nationwide struck down. So judges, one after another, including Republican appointed judges, are finding legitimate workarounds.
Yep.
So I think Donald Trump will get more desperate, and I
Yep.
think that will hasten his political demise, not extend his time in office. But the watchword is peaceful. We have to remain peaceful, and God forbid he starts directing folks to shoot protesters in the legs. That may be the tipping point. I don't want to be shot in the legs, but I would rather be shot in the legs and let that inspire everybody to fight than lay down and, continue to feed the monster rather than fight the monster. We have to fight the monster.
And some good news. And speaking about the resistance, Chris Geidner, who had on yesterday, fantastic work at Law Dork, said a judge issued an administrative stay stopping South Sudan's deportations as of now. So a few hours ago, a judge stayed this horrific Supreme Court decision that allows 8 men to go. Resistance at every level, folks. And I was talking about this yesterday with Joy and others. Is resistance? Everyone, Glenn, is looking. You're a boxer. Everyone's looking out for the haymaker. Everyone wants the left hook.
Mm-mm.
Look at Floyd Merriweather, right?
Body
It's just
shots, baby, body shots. They,
body shot, round by round, round by round, death by 1,000 cuts. Go ahead. You were saying.
I'm sorry. Now, see, now I got to go hit my heavy bag in my garage because you got me all worked up.
Yeah, it's people think that this is going to happen as a haymaker in a 2026 election, or you can outsource this to Iron Man. Nope, this is a long walk. This is a generational fight, and every type of resistance is a cut, a cut, a cut to the fascist machine, and eventually those cuts add up, and it breaks apart. And that's what we have to think of. It's a long walk, a long march, a generational fight. Each and everything that everyone does adds up to something at a local level in your home. Quickly, if I may, a father, a friend of mine who's a middle-aged father, called me 2 days ago, said, man, my son, beautiful boy, kind boy, thoughtful boy, 18 years old, went down the right wing rabbit hole, repeats right wing talking points. Kills me, bro. What do I do? And I said, be the best father you can, model yourself in your language and your actions, and then your kid, inshallah, will come around. He's a good kid, right? So even as a parent, the way you model empathy and kindness, right? Them seeing you fight the good fight, them seeing you stand up for transgender folks, undocumented, Muslims, women, right? In your street, being kind to your neighbors, right? City council, right? Run for it, right? School boards, local, local, local. All of this adds up, folks. All of this adds up. And as Glenn said, speaking out on Facebook, on social media, if someone's saying some lie or disinformation, just intervene. Just intervene right there. Give another voice, right? Because people, folks, I used to be bullied as a kid. This is what a bully does. The bully picks on the weakest kid, make sure there's an audience, picks on the kid, and then everyone else cowers in fear. But what happens, Glenn, when one or two other people stand up and say, F you, bully? It gives courage. Courage and hope is contagious. So I hope this conversation gave you some hope on July 4th. I want to thank Glenn. Glenn, I'm gonna prop you up, but I'm gonna let you prop you first. Shamelessly promote yourself before I do.
Here on Substack, which is, I've only been on here a few months. I left MSNBC after 6.5 years as an on-air legal analyst, and I asked them to release me from my contract 6 months early
Good for
because
you.
I couldn't be part of corporate media, legacy media anymore. And so if you want to follow me on Substack, that's great. You want to follow me over on my YouTube channel, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner, and please hit subscribe. I'm the worst YouTuber ever in some sense because I never ask people to hit subscribe during my video, which is idiotic of me, but it's free. Nothing behind a paywall, doesn't cost anything. So those are two places. And the third place, if you really want to get the behind the scenes, you can come to patreon.com and you can see some of the behind the scenes stuff about how we run everything at the Justice Matters studio all day, every day. And that's kind of a fun backstage glimpse to all of this.
And Glenn is such a good guy. He's going to get embarrassed, but I want to say this. I got him on a July 4th. I was supposed to keep him 30. I kept him for an hour because I was enjoying listening to him. We're going to have this conversation up. I know there's almost 2,000 people watching. I strongly recommend listening to Glenn. He breaks it down, connects the dots, and tells you what you can do, and also gave his outline of where Trump is going with his fascist agenda. We'll have this up on our Substack about an hour or so. But I want to mention that when I was going back and forth here from DC to New York without any money on an Amtrak train to MSNBC every week, every Saturday for David Gura's show, like at 7 a.m. And then I was doing CNN on Sunday. And I was like, man, I'm destroying myself. I'm exhausted. How do I get a contract from this? And Glenn was the one who helped mentor me and gave me a strategy and then told me, hey, man, this is how I got the contract. And then put me in touch with another person. I think it was Harry Littman, who also gave me some advice. So I want to publicly thank you for being a good dude and going out of your way. You didn't have to do that, but you saw me busting my back and you're like, you should get paid. And as a result of that strategy and maybe just luck, eventually I got a contract at CNN for a year, and then the pandemic happened. But I also am no longer on corporate media, folks. And I was just thinking about this early in the morning. Yesterday, I talked to Joanne Reed, talked to Chris Geidner, talked to Mike Madrid. Today, I talked to Glenn. All the people who I'd be talking to on corporate media, I'm talking to them vis-a-vis independent media. Isn't that great? I mean, that's fantastic. So, folks, this is where it's at. Please, please, please subscribe to Glenn's Substack. Go watch his YouTube channel. He has exploded in the best of ways. This has been The Left Hook, much like Glenn. I have kept everything for free on purpose. There are no paywalls to anything that I do. I believe a citizenship should be informed as it is fighting for democracy against fascism. If you have a few bucks, I need that also. Please do. I got 3 kids. I'm completely independent, but I get it. It's tough right now. Inshallah, down the road, if you got a few bucks, give it to us. If not, at least spread the word and be informed. Be kind, be empathetic. Today is July 4th. We should not allow fascists to take away our joy, our happiness, or our country. Independence, damn it. The founding fathers, 249 years ago, said, F you, monarchy, F you, kings. We're an independent sovereign nation, and we're going to flex with the Declaration of Independence. So enjoy yourselves, enjoy your family, enjoy the fireworks. We need joyful fighters for the long walk ahead. And thank you, Glenn, for being a good dude, number one, and for being a selfless dude and spending an hour of your Friday with me on July 4th. I hope you really get to enjoy your family and maybe go, get some left hooks in that punching bag that you have in your garage.
Yeah, Wajahat, great to be with you. Let's do it again. And, I'll say don't confuse kindness with weakness, because kindness is strength and decency is strength and empathy is strength. And lastly, diversity. Diversity may be the only superpower America has left. So let's embrace it, let's support it, and let's fucking fight for it.
Let's fight for it. Happy Independence Day, everyone. Glenn, thanks, man. Take care.